tell me, what is metabolism? Metabolism it is the process through which energy is derived, okay, or the process which involves the building of the reserve food material, okay. And there are different kinds of metabolic pathways, okay. Right? There are anabolic pathways, there are catabolic pathways, and there are anabolic pathways, okay. Right? Anabolic pathways in which the substance are made, or the anabolic process is something that involves making of a polymeric form. Catabolism here, it is the process which involves degradation of the nutrients, okay. And then there is amphibolism. Amphibolism involves both catabolism and anabolism, okay. And the example for the anabolic pathway is the TCA cycle, right? TCA cycle, okay. So basically this glycolysis, okay, or by definition the glycolysis is defined as the process which involves the conversion of a 6 carbon containing glucose into 2 molecules of 3 carbon containing pyruvate, okay. Once again I will tell you, glycolysis is defined as the process which involves conversion of a 6 carbon containing glucose into 2 molecules of 3 carbon containing pyruvate, right? And one important thing you should know that glycolysis is independent of oxygen, okay. So there is no absolute requirement for the glycolysis to happen inside the cell, okay. And inside the cell the glycolysis happens in the cytoplasm. Cytoplasm, right? Glycolysis. And glycolysis is independent of oxygen, okay, right? And so basically for today's objective, our today's objective will be learning what are the steps of glycolysis, okay, what is the regulation of the glycolysis, okay, steps of the glycolysis and regulation of the glycolysis, okay, right? So the first step, first definition that we have, right? And before going on to the stepwise reaction, पहिला सुरु के बुझ्यो त भन्दाखेरि ग्लाइकोलाइसिस मा कतिवटा फेज हुन्छ, है, कतिवटा स्टेज हुन्छ. So there are 3 different stages in glycolysis, okay, stage 1, stage 2 and stage 3, okay. Stage 1 भनेको in glycolysis is the energy investment phase. Stage 1 भनेको कस्तो फेज हो त? Energy investment phase. Stage 2 भनेको चाहिँ where the molecule is cleaved, where a single molecule is cleaved into 2 different molecules, okay. Second stage of the glycolysis. And third stage of the glycolysis is energy yielding phase, where the ATPs they are made, okay. So there are the different stages of the glycolysis, okay. Stage 1 मा के हुन्छ त? एनर्जी इन्भेस्ट. Second stage मा के हुन्छ त? एनर्जी, there is no as such. In stage 2 there is a cleavage of a single molecule into 2 molecules, and the third stage involves the ATP yielding. Okay, so there are the different stages of the glycolysis, okay. Now coming to first step of glycolysis, right? So the first step of glycolysis involves conversion of glucose into glucose 6-phosphate. Conversion of glucose into glucose 6-phosphate. Okay? And here there is an enzyme that is involved. The name of the enzyme is hexokinase. Hexokinase is an enzyme catalyzing the first step of the glycolysis. Okay? And in the first step of glycolysis, ATP serves as a phosphate donor. ATP conversion of glucose or phosphorylation of glucose into glucose 6-phosphate by the enzyme hexokinase, where ATP serves as a phosphate donor. So after donating its phosphate, it is converted into ADP. Okay, right? So that's why I say stage 1 is the energy investment phase, where ATP they are utilized by different enzymes, okay, for phosphorylating of substrate. And one more important thing, in this step there is also a requirement of inorganic material, and that inorganic material is the magnesium ions. Okay, the magnesium ions serve as a cofactor in the first step of the glycolysis. So what is the function of this Mg2+? Basically, it is required for the activation of the enzyme hexokinase. Okay, that is involved in the first process of glycolysis. Okay, now second process or second step is there is a conversion or there is a isomerization. Okay, you can say it as a isomerization reaction where glucose 6-phosphate is converted into or isomerized into fructose 6-phosphate by the enzyme called as phosphohexose isomerase. Phosphohexose isomerase. Okay. Right. So these are the first two steps of the glycolytic pathway. Okay. In the first step, there is a phosphorylation of the glucose, and in the second step there is a isomerization of glucose 6-phosphate into fructose 6-phosphate. Okay. Now coming to third stage of glycolysis. The third step of glycolysis. The third step of glycolysis again involves phosphorylation of fructose 6-phosphate into phosphorylating fructose 6-phosphate, whereby fructose 6-phosphate is converted into fructose 1,6-bisphosphate. The enzyme for this reaction is the phosphofructokinase 1. The phosphofructokinase 1. Okay. Here also there is a requirement of the ATP. Here in this reaction also ATP serves as a phosphate donor. Okay, so the first three steps of the glycolysis is the stage 1, where two molecules of ATP they are consumed. Okay, two molecules of ATP are consumed. Right, stage 1. यहाँ सम्म के छ? यहाँ सम्म के छ भन्नु सक्नु?